Welcome to everybody to our 2021 Simple Good and True Chicago Black Creativity, the Future Through the Past panel and event that we are having. We're really excited to be with you, and we just want to welcome everybody. I know folks are getting situated and a lot of folks are going to be joining us. So as you're joining, we would love for you to engage with us, utilize the chat as much as you're able. I'm excited to be with you guys. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear and see me okay. You can just throw a thumbs up in the chat just to make sure that we are good. And yeah, we're excited to be with all of you. And what I would like to do is just introduce myself. My name is David Johnson. And I am the executive director of True Chicago. True Chicago supports the diverse and equitable development of young creatives and artists by providing programs, opportunities, and all kinds of things that connect young artists with emerging and established creative professionals to push them forward in their career. And we are so excited and happy to be doing this event with the one and only Simple Good. And I just want to introduce Priya Shah, who is the executive director and founder of Simple Good.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight. We're so excited to be able to partner together and collaborate on this incredibly powerful and important conversation about Black history and the influence on all of us during this really special month. And so we're so grateful to have our amazing artists and TSG family and True Chicago family join us here tonight to really have a beautiful discussion about that truth. For those of you that don't already know, our mission is to connect the meaning of good from around the world to empower youth to become positive activists through art and discussion. And really to transcend the message that no matter where you go in the world, good means the same to all of us. And that is what connects us as human beings. So all the artists here tonight are really artists of Chicago that bring the simple good to our world, but also are an extension of our mission. So we're so excited to hear their voices and their wisdom and be able to have you guys share that with us tonight. So thank you all.
Thank you, Priya. Let me turn my video. I was so excited to be with you guys today that I actually put on a suit jacket for like the first time during quarantine or during these COVID times. So I'll probably get too hot at some point and take it off, but I'm just excited to do this, to be with you guys. And I'm excited for the fact that there's actually some nice weather outside and we can like receive sunshine onto our skin and faces. So hopefully all of you guys are in a good mental space and ready to engage in this time. Before we start, we just want to go over a couple of just housekeeping things to make this the most enjoyable time for everybody possible. The first thing is I would suggest gallery view. So then you can make sure you're just able to see the conversation and experience the person who's talking in the best way. So gallery view is at the top right corner of your Zoom. And then the second thing is stay muted and camera off. We love your voices and your faces. But I think as we all have learned during these Zoom times, it is really easy for something to become distracting, whether it's sound or whatever. And so we want to make sure that that's taken care of. And then the last thing is just get engaged. Feel free to interact, ask questions in the chat. There'll be moments where we're asking one of our panelists a question, but we would also love to hear your answer to that question as a person who is joining us today. So make sure that you engage and just jump in with us. So what I would like to do first is, let me just get my own view all good and set up. There we go. What I would love to do first is, again, thank you all for joining us. And in a second, I'm going to just introduce us to our panelists today that have been gracious enough to just give of their time and be with us. And I'll have to say that, I mean, when Priya and I were kind of going through how we wanted to do this event and how to engage everybody, one of the things that we thought was important, you know, when we talk about Black history and when we talk about American history in general, I think we need to do a better job of defining what history means, and the fact that it isn't something somewhere else for someone else, but it's something that informs who we are in this place and time. And so we wanted to call on some folks that could speak to that and really could use their own history as a lens through which we could all look to better understand the importance of that history. And I think at the end of the day, what we want to see happen is instead of seeing Black history as a separate thing, especially as it pertains to the creative and the arts, we want to begin to pick that up and root ourselves in that history. And as we create and as we share our own giftings with the world, we want to see that history become what we're rooted in and how we go forward. So with all of that said, can we just first give a hand? I know that most of you guys are on mute, but that you could also, you know, it could be some snaps or some thumbs up. Yep, I see a woo. That's what I want. Show me some love. Yep, the clapping. There we go. Show me you're alive in some way. Because if we were in person, that's exactly what we would be doing for this incredible panel, is just showing our love. And so what I want to do is just introduce them to you. We're going to start with the one and only Kahil El'Zabar. He is a world-class Chicago-based jazz percussionist, band leader, and composer that has been at the forefront of the spiritual jazz avant-garde scene since the 1970s. He draws on African rhythms and contemporary hip-hop and R&B into his music with his two bands, the Ritual Trio and the Ethnic Heritage Ensemble. Kahil, thank you for being with us. I know I missed a bunch, and with all of these, if I read any of these people's real bios, we would not get in a panel. So, Kahil, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, David, you not only wore a suit jacket, you got on a tuxedo. You're looking good, baby.
So it's the only one I had, clean.
No, it's great. It's great. Thank you for being here and having me on this very prestigious panel. For me, it's about the acknowledgement of lineage, what you come from, what you are connected to, and thus where you are going. There are great, great unknown as well as known women and men who make me what I am today. I'm thankful for the experiences. I'm thankful for the grace of memory. And I'm thankful for what I guess I've lived for the last 50 years of doing my work. It's, 50 years I've been at this. So, man, I mean, it's kept me sane. This world can bring you to a point. I was watching last night the new Perry Mason series on HBO. And so, the brother that plays the policeman on that, was telling them, no one knows what it's like to have to make apologies for your existence by the laws of immorality in this society. And so we come from a great, great history with enormous contributors, again, be they known and unknown. I am very proud to be a part of that kind of history and to be able to share within that lineage and also the future legacy.
Thank you, Kahil. Thank you for being with us. I'm excited to hear from you tonight. We will go next to the one and only. You guys are all the one and only. Darlene Jackson, AKA DJ Lady D is a producer, remixer, and founder and proprietor of Delectable Music. She primarily performs sets of house and disco music and has performed nationally and internationally and multiple music festivals. I was reading some of these music festivals before, and I feel like I danced to your music at a music festival before I even met you. So Lollapalooza, all of that. She founded Delectable Music, which is a premier house music label and marketing group where she curates events, produces and remixes music, and provides music supervision for various projects. Welcome, Darlene Jackson.
Thank you, David. Thank you, True Chicago. Thank you to The Simple Good for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you all and get into this discussion with some of my great friends. Love Eric, love Sadie, love Kahil. So what a wonderful lineup to be a part of, especially for Black History Month, which is History Month because all history is Black history and includes Black history. So I love that you all are having this conversation, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Darlene, for being with us. We're excited to hear more from you. So next we have Sadie Woods, and she is an award-winning multi-disciplinary artist, curator, and DJ. She's gotten the chance to showcase her talents everywhere from academia to nightclubs, boutiques to museums, nationally and internationally. Her work is rooted in social movements and resistance and producing collaborations within communities of difference. Welcome, Sadie. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you all and be in the company, as Darlene said, with everyone in the discussion today. So I'm really excited to be in conversation with you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And then last, but very much so not least, we have Eric Williams. He is the founder and creative director of the Silver Room, located in Hyde Park. He has always been committed to creating spaces and curating events that strengthen communities and fuel positive economic impact. Eric made it his mission to support and give back to his community through his ventures like the Silver Room, sound system block party. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, what up? How you doing? Happy to be here, like Darlene said, with all my friends. I just want to sit back and listen, honestly. It's like, I don't even want to say anything. I love all of y'all so much, and Sadie is just I'm happy to be here, and yeah, let's make this happen.
Man, well, I'm so excited for you guys to be here. And I mean, selfishly, this is a conversation that I would curate just to talk to you guys with no audience. And so for me, this is an exciting thing to just listen, to just absorb. And I want to get into some of these questions that we have, and kind of before we jump all the way into it, we'll have a few moments where we will share some photos that will kind of give some context to some of these questions that we'll ask. And so, I think the first question that I want to ask you guys is, what that you can think of has informed your earliest creative sensibilities, and maybe gave you some influences? What are some names of artists or even works that you would say marked you from the beginning?
I'll start, I guess, if nobody else will.
Go for it.
I went to a school called Marcus Garvey, and that was sort of the beginning of everything. I think that our principal, a woman named Mrs. Veazey, Marie Veazey, she was a vanguard and an innovator in cultural education. And so we learned so much about Black history at a time when I guess it wasn't necessarily happening all across the board in terms of CPS schools, but our school was deeply rooted in that conversation. And so we were often encouraged to go to the library. So Carter G. Woodson was down the street library. They have an amazing collection, the Vivian G. Harsh collection. And we became very familiar with that when we were super young. So I kind of credit being in that environment at that school at that time to really ensconcing me in the language of Black history and Black culture. I was very, I guess, blessed to have that experience because it did not always happen for a lot of children across the city. And from that conversation, I think my mother, she would take me every Saturday downtown and drop me off in Streeterville.
Wow.
Wow. I would go to, I auditioned for and became a part of a theater group. Now, this is crazy, but it was an all ages theater group from ages, well, it was really supposed to be 8 to 18, but my mom said I had so much energy, she had to do something with me. So she took me there. They decided to take me on at the age of 6. And so being exposed to ballet and drama and being on stage and things like that was really just another extension of getting that cultural history. So Jack and Jill players and going to Marcus Garvey School really kicked it off for me. And it let me know that my citizenship was unrestricted and limitless. And so I was able to really engage in culture from a very early age.
I love that. And I love the value that can be brought by just exposure and how that kind of sets the stage for where you were going and where you ended up. So Eric, I would love to hear from you. What were some of your earliest influences?
Sure. Wow. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is my uncle, and Kahil knows the story. My uncle's name was Ronnie Boykins. He played bass for Sun Ra. So Sun Ra would come by the house, when we were young. I was a little kid, I didn't know who this guy was who wore this crazy outfit.
That's what I was gonna say. Did he have the big stuff on when he came?
Yeah. And he would come by and he was always super nice to my grandma. That's the one thing I remember. He was just a nice person to my grandmother. Wow. But he was like this different kind of dude. He was just like, I'm Sun Ra, And I remember him and my uncle and their friends were just like cooler than everybody else. So I kind of gravitated to these people who were just cool. Before I even knew what jazz music even was, I liked these men. They were always very nice to me and very respectful to me. Later on, I got into the music, but at first it was just the personalities of these men mostly. The second thing I can think of is my father owned a bar called Manny's Blue Room in Robbins, Illinois, and one of his first DJs was a Herb Kent. And so I remember going out to the bar and just being around Herb Kent and stepping. This is back in the 70s, but then to the 80s. Just seeing the power of music. I'll never forget this one story. I don't know how I was young. I was probably 7, 8 years old. And this guy was really, really short. He was probably 5'5", And he would always come, he had his suit on, that stepper outfit,
Yep.
And one of my favorite songs still to this day is called A Haunted House by Ali Oscar. And the song would come on, and it would, you remind me of a haunted house.
I was going to ask you to sing it.
I can't sing. This song would come on, and this guy was just so smooth. And he would go and grab the prettiest girl in the club, and he could dance. Yeah. And so I just never forget this scene of this song coming on, and this man who just had this confidence that he channeled this song from in his music. And I just always wanted to be able to have the power to use music in a positive way. So those are my first two memories that come to mind.
Wow, I love that. And I love the idea of just Herb Kent in Robbins, Illinois, just spinning records. I love that. So, okay. So next, why don't we go with Kahil? What were some of your earliest influences?
Hearing Eric's uncle, Ronnie, with the Sun Ra band before they actually moved to New York. So I'm old enough to have heard them when they still lived in Chicago. It's so much stuff, what Darlene said about exposure and culture, what Eric, said about how these influences kind of shape your personality.
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up, there wasn't stepping. It was called bopping. And then later on, it became stepping. So I'm before stepping.
I'm so curious. Were there any major differences between
No,
bopping
it's
and
just
stepping?
that bopping had come from a dance called the Lindy Hop, and they did the Lindy Hop with bebop. And so when they did the Lindy Hop, the dance they called bopping. So then all throughout the various territories of the African American experience, people had their form of dancing with a man holding a woman's hand and a woman holding a man's hand, and then moving smoothly with the music in that way. And so it's a part of our etiquette of how we carry ourselves as young men, young women, older men, older women. It's a very graceful energy that's, a part of our culture. One of my earliest experience of understanding the energy was through a street artist named Chicken George. And so in the early 60s, my parents would take me to Maxwell Street, and we would see all of, Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all the great blues musicians. But the favorite of everybody was Chicken George, because he had these 3 chickens that he could make do the huckabuck and all of the dances, at that time. And so it was amazing to see how our culture creates a magic that transcends anything that anybody could imagine. And that's actually how we survive, beyond to an imagination that allowed us to see life through the beauty of cultural expression against the pain and the sorrow of our historical burden.
Wow.
So that's what touched me in the early part, is how you get off, how you get on, and how you get into it.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that, what you're talking about is woven into the genius that we see, that the two are not separate. They're actually woven into each other.
Yeah.
Sadie, how about you? What were some of your earliest influences?
Yeah, I would say it started at home with my parents, because they both were practicing musicians when they were younger, and also collected records. So we would have listening sessions at home on Sundays where I would choose a record to listen to with my parents and have sing-alongs with.
Wow.
So it kind of started there for me.
What were any of the records that you can recall that were go-tos for you?
Earth, Wind and Fire, Gap Band, Shaka Khan, a lot of funk, soul. And later on, I got into more jazz when I was in college studying jazz, and also venturing into the Afro-Latin diaspora extension of that as well.
Wow. Well, I can definitely relate with that sentiment of selecting a record, because I remember, my dad having this, big record collection, and I was just interested in the pictures, but I would get to select one, and I was enamored by, him actually putting the record on and turning it on, and then listening to it and just staring at the picture and like making that connection. The artwork or the people that I'm looking at is connected to, this music that I'm hearing. So I definitely feel that. So when you guys think of, we go from some of your earliest influences, and what we know, and part of the reason why we're having this conversation is because some of your moments that you have interacted with, again, they're not standalone moments, but your moments are participating on the longer continuum of history. And so for you, when you think of the history, when you think of specifically, when we're in a month like this, Black History, what are some of the people or even moments in Black creative history specifically that you can think of that are most important to you? So, I mean, this could be an artist, this could be, you know, a concert that you went to, this could be a painting you saw, this could be any of these things. Yeah, I'm curious to know for you guys, what are some of the things that, when you think of going through this month, it's just like, man, I think of, you know, watching Marvin Gaye perform at, I think it's the 1984 NBA All-Star game with his double-breasted suit and aviators on. And I was just like, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it impacted me and really even gave some shape to how I might approach some things. So for you, any of you guys, you can feel free to jump in. For you, what would you say would be one of those important moments for you?
Well, for me, it would be the first time I heard Coltrane live. And
Wow.
So we were at a club called McKee's on 63rd and Cottage Grove. And Train was playing and bending down with the horn. And then the whole room got quiet because Elvin Jones, the drummer, had actually gone to sleep and was still playing while he was asleep. And so the telepathy that was between them and the spiritual energy of being out of your body, but being completely in spirit, that led me to a journey that I'm still pursuing.
Wow. First of all, I have to just say a disclaimer. Kahil, it's almost like we asked a question, like, whoa, and you were like, Coltrane, I was there. And I'm talking about the one time I saw a YouTube video of Marvin Gaye. But you were like in the room. So anybody else, I mean, even if you weren't in the room with John Coltrane, you know, were there other moments? And I'll even expand it beyond creative. If there were moments in general or people in general that you feel like were most important to you, what were they, Darlene?
I was just going to add to that. I had a really transformative experience when I was probably 8 or 9. My parents took me to see, my parents are very much fans of going to plays and seeing things in the theater. And so Catwoman, Eartha Kitt, was
wow
in an amazing musical called Timbuktu. And this was directed, produced, choreographed by Joffrey Holder, who's the 7-Up man at the time. Crisp and clean and no caffeine. And so I knew of these people, and to go to a play and see something like Timbuktu, which was about Africa, it was so big and over the top and opulent and made me proud, you know, to have African descent, to be of African descent.
Wow.
And so that was real transformative for me. I just remember leaving the theater with stars in my eyes. Like, that was an incredible experience. It was such a beautiful thing. And I know that you can still see some clips. They're very bad quality, but if you ever go on YouTube and search Eartha Kitt in Timbuktu, and she was like a childhood hero and icon for me, the best Catwoman ever. So
yeah. I love that because I think some of these most important moments, they're moments that can create, you know, a sense of wonder, a sense of interest, but then there's others that create a sense of pride, like you're saying. And I think that, you know, especially when you're young, it's like no one really teaches you how to feel pride, you know. It's something that you are almost like, it's innate, it comes out and you're like, it was there and something had to activate it. And so that's cool to hear for you, kind of what activated that. It looks like somebody may have even found the one of the links, so we'll have to check that out. So how about Sadie, for you, can you think of any of these moments for you?
Yeah, I can share what I've been focusing on has been thinking about resistance, resilience a lot through work and also as a teacher, and thinking about just music and art and social movements and how they've always been intertwined, and the power of that through communicating information, emotions, feelings, historical events, and yeah. So it's for me, it's pretty broad, and
Yeah.
and through teaching, I do make it a point to connect students to Chicago history as they're choosing to come here for school. And so, I've been talking to them about movements like the Afro-Cobra movement, the Black Arts movement, and the connection to the city. So that's kind of what I've been ruminating on.
Yeah. I think that's cool because I feel like part of remembering these moments and how they impacted you is being able to speak about them and even teach about them and share, and watch how they're able to impact others as well. So Eric, how about you?
For me, it was probably not necessarily an artistic moment, but a social political moment, and that was
Okay.
the Million Man March.
Wow.
Man, I went there with my father actually, and so my background before I had the store, I used to be a street peddler, street vendor. So I was always selling T-shirts everywhere I went. And my father was like, "We can go, but you can't sell T-shirts. You gotta pay attention to what's going on." And I was like, "That's some serious money I'm about to miss out on."
I love that.
So we drove to DC. He played his friend played Hugh Masekela the entire way. Nothing but Hugh Masekela, entire 12 hours.
For those of us that don't know what that is, share what that is.
Masekela is a South African artist. He just actually, I think he passed away a couple of years ago.
Wow.
You have to look. He actually had a disco song called "Don't Go Lose It, Baby." Don't go lose it, baby. He also played jazz and other stuff. Anyway, Hugh Masekela. But listen to him the whole way. But I remember getting to the Million Man March and just, the morning, we had no idea. Would it be 1 million people? Would it be 15 people? We didn't really know, I remember going out in the morning and just playing music and people started coming and coming and coming. I remember we were kind of towards the front. I remember looking back and it was like 1 million people. And it was 90% Black men. There was some women there, there was some white folks there, but for the most part, it was Black men. And that feeling actually kind of inspired me to do the block party in many ways, because it was the emotion of that day that everyone wanted something positive. It was like this vibe in the air. That I think about the block party a lot. And when I do the block party, I actually think about the Million Man March. That kind of just helped inform me, again, bringing people together. I mean, I'm not as much of an artist as the other panelists are. I'm more of a person that brings artists together. And that's something that's just kind of stuck in my mind.
I love that. And first, man, I feel like your dad knew what he was talking about.
He was right.
I think
money though, so.
No, I think that's one. Before we go on to this next question, I think I would love to hear from in the chat some of you guys that are listening. For you, what was one of the moments in Black history that has been most important, or even people that you feel like has been most important to you? Because I think, from what Eric just said and what everybody shared, but what Eric just said, I think is so interesting because, some of these moments, they'll bring pause to the way we were approaching life before that moment, or the way we saw others before that moment. And I think, you having that moment of looking back and seeing kind of a sea of Black men, and the fact that you don't even have to say much more than that, it's like that all of a sudden activated something inside of you. And I think, again, that kind of gets to this whole bigger picture that we're looking at in this conversation, and really want to make sure that everybody leaves with, is this importance that, all of the moments are history. And without those moments, it's like we don't have the right lens to proceed. And I think using those past moments that we have personally interacted with is important because it's going to inform going forward in the right way. And so, I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to ask you guys is, you know, how have you, you know, participated in some way in this history that we see of Black creativity? How has this kind of intersected or maybe even collided with your life? Because I know a lot of you guys, you probably didn't wake up and decide, you know, I want to be, you know, who I am now. It's something that in some way you collided with, and it started to bring something out of you. So I guess, you know, what I want to know is, how have you been in your past participating or participated in moving the culture, you know, forward in some way?
I can start this time.
Go for it.
So I've been thinking a lot about mixtapes, and the history of mixtapes and how music has been shared in that kind of way. And so I've been working on a series of mixtape releases on vinyl. And last year was my second one, and I did a project called Party is Protest, and it focused on Chicago musicians that have been using music as a form of social mobilization. And the artwork for the vinyl was actually inspired by Fela. So I just showed it here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I just, you know, decided for myself to start focusing on putting out, I don't want to say like product, but actual, just projects that kind of share this history and record the history, not just the past, but also what's happening now. Because I think it's just as important to have a catalog, especially within a city like Chicago that has a long-standing history with this kind of work. So.
Wow. And it looks like somebody just dropped the SoundCloud link for a Party is Protest. So please, everybody, go check that out. Kahil, how about you? In your mind, when you think of, you know, your participation in this larger culture of Black history, Black creativity, what do you feel like in your mind has been your participation with it overall?
You know, I mean, I've been a jazz musician professionally since 1968. And there was a picture of Nina Simone up on the screen a while ago. You know, I mean, I worked with Nina Simone. I worked with Cannonball Adderley. I worked with Donny Hathaway. I worked with Stevie Wonder. I worked with Nona Hendrix, David Murray, Pharoah Sanders. So I've recorded over 70 recordings under my name, and I'm on more than 400 recordings with people like that. And then I've tried to give back by working with younger musicians that have now gone on to have stellar careers, like Junius Paul and Corey Wilkes and Justin Dillard and Fareed Haq and Kurt Elling. You know, all these people have come through my bands. So, you know, so I think I've contributed something over the last 50 years. And
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah, you know, but, you know, then there are just subtle things like, you know, a lot of people all over the world younger than me say daddy-o. And the only way they got to say daddy-o is that I said daddy-o, so they did it. But the reason I did it is that Dizzy Gillespie, who I work with and was mentored by, he called me daddy-o. So sometimes you pass on things subtly. And now there are young people all over the whole world that say daddy-o because of me, but it's because Dizzy Gillespie said it to me. So certain things are like publicly passed on, and then certain things are subliminally passed on. So I've tried to pass on lexicon, language, style. I've been doing events, you know, in my spaces for over 40 years, and people have come to those events and sometimes been transformed. You know, I've tried to pass on menus, ways of cooking. I've tried to pass on ways of dressing from periods, and like that, you know, was born Clifton Blackburn, so my first cousin is Darlene Blackburn. So I came up in the Afrocentric, Afro dance, all of that, and so I've tried to continue and hopefully been an example of doing it with excellence, with quality, and with a passionate commitment.
Wow. Man, first of all, I did not know your mentor was Dizzy Gillespie.
Well, that's one of my mentors.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I worked with Dizzy from 1976 through 78.
Wow. That's incredible. And I mean, also to think of what was going on in the world at the time, that you were making this music and that you were interacting with these people, obviously, you know, in a lot of similar ways to what we've seen over the past year, it's almost like, it's not just things are changing, but it's like almost like the tectonic plates underneath the culture and the country and the world are shifting. And so, I mean, I'll start off with you again, Kahil, with this one is, I mean, how have you seen art and creativity influence movements throughout history in the way that you've seen it? You know, how have some of these artists, some of these musicians, how have they, you know, participated, I guess?
Well, you know, trying to focus on Chicago, since we only have a short amount of time, Chicago was one of the places where the detailing of cars first happened in the 1920s, where they were painted different colors. Now that is a multi-trillion-dollar business detailing all over the world, but it was African Americans who started it, and then the Latino community picked it up from them. Another example, the Zoot Suit, made by a guy named Kerry the Tailor, who was a Chicago tailor. He made it for Cab Calloway. And Cab Calloway wanted to keep up with the younger cats like Dizzy and Bird, who were cool. So he needed a new look. So a Chicago tailor made that look. But then there was an Italian designer named Armani that looked at the way that was made and took what is considered couture today, which comes from a Chicago tailor, which has a world influence. I could go on for days giving you all kinds of direct historical examples of how Black creativity has transformed the world. There was a dance I talked about earlier called the Huckabuck. And so that came from Mississippi, and it was done in Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis up the Mississippi River. And then white folks got it, and it was called the Charleston, which was the most famous dance between the 1920s and 30s. But everything that we do in dance today, house music and all that, comes from the Huckabuck, what comes from Mississippi to Chicago.
Wow. Wow. You're right. We could go all day on it. Darlene, I have to ask you, because I know your contributions have been major as well. But I mean, when you think of, you know, creatives participating in movements, what do you think of?
I obviously do think of house music as somebody who is a steward and ambassador of that culture and cultural movement, American musical, Black American musical art form out of Chicago, that really has changed the world in many ways. It's gone global and often imitated, but never duplicated. The birthplace of house music being Chicago, and then some of the derivative movements like footwork that are, you know, a dance that is strictly Chicago, but has changed the world of dance. From music videos with Missy Elliott to just everything. So be it on the world of dance and all of the So You Think You Can Dance, and people try to do footwork, but footwork is really, you know, Chicago. So a lot of the derivative forms of expression that have come out of house music, I think really moved me in the last 25 years of my career of being a DJ. You know, I didn't get here on my own. I was never a spectator in the sport. Like when house exploded, I was there as a dancer and as part of somebody who espoused the culture, right? So house music is not just the music. It was very much a cultural movement. We all came from, you know, we were like Southside kids, but our parents were followers of Dr. King and even Malcolm X. And so 60s civil rights was sort of fueling the desire to go out and create something and to resist and to create space for us and to be unapologetic in our right to enjoy life. And so house music, for that reason, I think that's one of the reasons why it is such a badass, you know, cultural movement and has gone so far, because we are really, it really was born of the right materials, which included love and included liberation. And so, so yeah, so I owe my DJ career to a lot of things, you know, but I love the fact that there were Black women that came before me, like Lori Branch and Celeste Alexander, Chrissy Henderson, that made it somewhat easier for me to do what I came to do in the 90s.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard it said that, you know, these unique original forms of Black music, which, like you were saying before, is really American music. It's almost like a willed creative response to systematic violence. You know, you have these things that happened in a systematic way to put peoples in a certain place, to keep them from certain places, whatever it is. And you see like this deep connection to these eruptions of styles of music, styles of dress coming out of those same moments. Eric, I've heard you talk about house before in the past, and all these different kinds of responses as well. What, in your mind, what do you think?
Think about what? Say it again now.
Sorry. What specifically? We were already talking about house music, so I think that that's probably a good place to start. Like, I mean, your understanding of like its inception and kind of the way you see Black creativity participating in movements overall.
Sure. I mean, talk about a seminal moment. You know, I spoke about the Million Man March later in my life. Me being in my father's bar at the beginning of my life, but in my early teens, it was definitely house music. You know, hearing you know, Frankie Knuckles, Ron Hardy, going to the club for the first time and having that sound system. You know, it was like, what is this? You know, it was like so different. Also being from a small town in Robbins, you know, going to a big city and gay people, straight people, people dressed, you know, with hair, you know, it was so different to me, but nobody really cared. They were there for the music. And so that was the thing that's kind of just sparked this interest in me. Is like, man, like we all here for the same reason, and we don't really care what's going on, you know? Yeah. And so that was another inspirational, you know, point for me. And I think it go back to just my career and what I've been doing the whole time is just trying to create space, you know, be it Silver Room, be it a block party, be it whatever, be it, you know, Square One for the restaurant we had way back in the day. The importance of space, but really that is most importantly, is to create a new history. You know, we sometimes think about, you know, what used to be. I'm in Bronzeville right now. I live in Bronzeville. We always talk about Bronzeville used to be. It was a jazz thing. It was this. I'm like, let's create something now that 10 years from now, 30 years from now, they'll talk about this moment instead of us looking back 30, 40, 50 years from now. So I try and create things that will have a legacy and a long-lasting impression on people, that this could be our moment. You know, I think all the panelists, I mean, I work with all of them, and we all kind of feel the same. And I think that also comes from us being very interested in history. knowing that we didn't just start doing this. You know, I didn't just start doing this. This came from somewhere. We mentioned where this came from before. You know, Kahil has influences, Sadie has influences, and we understand those influences, and also trying to pass on to the younger folks for them to have an interest in history, that knowing that this just didn't start in 2015, and where their influences came from to carry on the tradition. So for me, it's really about trying to create some very important history now for 50 years from now.
Yeah. Sadie, were you going to say something? You just leaned forward. I thought you were about to say something.
I didn't know if you were going to call on me, so I was preparing myself. But
we'll go for it.
I just wanted to touch on just really quickly on what Eric was saying about creating space. And I think about that through curatorial work. And that's kind of where my head is at when I'm doing that kind of work in the arts, is finding platforms to provide space for young artists, to young, emerging, and intergenerational programming through that, to create those dialogues and kind of bridge some gaps, through the work.
No, I love that. And I think that, one of the key words that I've been meditating on a lot is space, because I feel like, Kahil, I know you and Priya and I were talking about this last week, I think, just this idea of, specifically for Black people, there being a lack of space that they could own or be in, or, be identified with in a positive, powerful way. So, one of the things that I can't help but think of in the context of this conversation is, it isn't a secret that a lot of the younger artists, a lot of the emerging and artists that are coming up, a lot of them do feel disconnected at times from, history. And it does feel like, hey, I'm just making this music, or I'm just presenting this piece, whether it's visual or music, whatever. But one of the things that I feel like all of you guys have in common is that you draw pretty deeply on the history of things as a Black creative. Your personal history, the larger history, these things seem to be like the ground from which you come. And so for you guys, what would you, I guess it's two questions. How have you done that? How have you been able to stay connected or to draw from that? And I think the second question is, how do you do that? How would you instruct someone to do that? So Kahil, maybe we'll start with you, because I know that this is something that we've talked about a lot and is important to you. So.
Well, it's important to all of us. It was great to hear, from Sadie, Darlene, and Eric. Everybody mentioned their parents, and that their parents were a conduit to the meaning of what life was, the meaning of history and culture. As I said in the beginning, we come from a great legacy, but if you don't know anything about it, it's hard to be proud of it.
Wow.
What a lot of the disconnect we have today is by design, because when you have your history, you are rich. When you have your history, you are connected to depth, power, and all of that. So when I was growing up, it was really important, tap dancing wasn't part of my generation, but at my age, everybody sent Black kids to tap dancing. So even though tap dancing was maybe 50 years before my time, I was connected to it, taking classes at Jimmy Payne and Sammy Dyer that my parents paid for. Every Saturday, I had to go to tap dancing. Then at my church, Mount Carmel Baptist Church, that Ramsey Lewis's father, Ramsey Lewis Sr., he was the deacon, and Ramsey Lewis was the pianist. My whole history was constantly legacy. This is the normal stuff I grew up with. So at Mount Carmel Baptist Church, we had Battle of the Band, where the families had to sell fried chicken to get the money for the bands. The two bands were Duke Ellington and Count Basie. This is my basic life, you know what I mean? And so, when I look at things like Darlene spoke about footwork, I can see footwork continued all the way from huckabuck, buck dancing in the 20s, that is 50 years before I'm born. But because the history was a part of how my generation translated our purposefulness. We have to find ways to reignite that so we don't see.
He was really bringing it.
He was so cold, he froze the screen. That's how cold
he was taking it there. He was taking it there. We'll see if he jumps back in. What do one of you guys want to jump in while we're waiting for him?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh,
Question.
Eric is gonna.
Sorry, I lost you guys.
Oh, no. Go for it.
But I'm just saying, that is the thing that I think we have to do now is how we use contemporary technologies in order to gain all of the content, the history, the cultural references, and then find new ways of sharing and teaching so that we can help our community understand the global impact of their value and how we can innovate opportunities from that cultural history for humanity in the future.
Wow.
I couldn't agree more. I just want to jump in on what Kahil said, because that is exactly my, one of the things that I've done consistently throughout my career was to find archival speeches and run those acapellas throughout some, house tracks while I'm creating on the fly or, recording for a mix. I love to find people who pop in my head and, I'm like, oh man, I need to get some Angela Davis. So, or I need some, Malcolm X, or I need some James Baldwin. I just want to hear it. And I find ways to weave it into the music. And so some of it may be subliminal, some of it is, way out in your face, but I try to make that connection to the past because I think we can have some inspirational moments in unexpected places. And so people have said things, Nelson Mandela, and, that just really resonate with me. And so I try to weave it into the thing. I would say if anybody is interested in finding source material like that, I usually go to the Internet Archives. And so the Internet Archives is like this huge repository of, sort of free stuff. But, it's a nonprofit and they have literally millions of free books and movies and software and music. And so they have all of this audio material. And that's what I use primarily if I'm looking for something to kind of layer in. The other thing that I like is the historymakers.org. It's founded by a woman here in Chicago, Juliana Richardson, and it is an amazing archive of American, Black American history. So the historymakers.org is a great place to just find out things about people who you wouldn't even know. I mean, from technology to, runs the gamut from science and music and all the arts, but sciences as well. So it's an amazing, vast archive. And if people don't know it, they should get to know it.
We'll definitely check those out. And I think we'll even drop them in the chat here in a second. Eric or Sadie, really, I think that the essence of the question that I'm asking is, how have you been able to stay rooted in sort of the history that you've come from? Because when I see the work that whether, Eric, it's your work through the Silver Room, or Sadie through your music and through your art, like it's clear that you're being informed historically. And, when we're talking about younger artists, that we want to help do that as well. How have you done that? And how would you suggest ways to do that?
I can jump in. I would say that my work is rooted in research. So I spend a lot of time not just doing academic research, but also social research. And that's something that I really miss, you know, being in these times, is actually being around people and listening to what's happening at the street level, and then going and doing research within academia to kind of bridge the gap between the stories of different time periods. And I also spend time talking with my family and asking questions when I, you know, and a lot of what I've been working on now and what I've been thinking about it is the history of migrations, but through my family. So, you know, it gets kind of complicated because everybody has different recollections of what has happened or what what their experiences were.
Right.
But it's been a way to reimagine some things outside of, you know, what's been included in textbook, which to me is important to have the space to reimagine stories. And I think a lot of the concepts behind that is storytelling, whether it's through DJing or making art, building those concepts. Research is a big part of that. And another good archive is the Smithsonian Folkways. They have a lot of good stuff too.
Say it again.
Smithsonian Folkways.
Smithsonian Folkways.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll continue to drop some of those in the chat, but what I really, really like about what you just said, Sadie, is, you know, asking questions in your family, asking questions of those who are kind of the keepers of some of that history, because I think as especially younger creatives, younger artists, it's easy to see like, hey, my art, my work is over here, and my family and a lot of my history is over here, when they kind of have to find their way together for you to find your way forward. And that's what I love about listening to you guys talk, because it's clear, obviously it's an ongoing process and we're always all figuring it out, but it's clear that you guys have been doing that. I want to give you guys a chance if you have any last things that you want to share, because we're going to be wrapping up here in a second. One of the things that I know that a lot of resources have been shared, but I want to actually share, we're going to share in a second some of the resources that we've compiled for you guys to continue to look into Black creative history and Black history in general. Kahil, I remember you telling me probably the last time we talked, you were telling me about a few of the folks that were in the neighborhood with you. I remember you mentioning folks like Mahalia Jackson and even Mamie Till, and the fact that you were having interactions with some of these folks. And I wonder, one, what that was like, but then also two, you know, how did that start to inform how you proceeded as an artist?
You know, the situation with Mamie Till, that was my next door neighbor. You know, my family lived at 8440 Wabash and she was at 8438. So that was next door. And so my mother told me that Mamie had lost her son, and then showed me all the pictures of how Emmett Till had been slain. And so she said, son, you have to shovel her snow and cut her grass because she doesn't have a son to do it. So at 6 years old, 7 years old, it kind of shaped me into being a servant in my community. And then at the end of the corner, at the corner of 84 and 83rd, where they meet on Michigan, the next block over, was a house with a big round parking way driving into the house like a U circle. And that was the home of Mahalia Jackson. And so, you know, it's so funny, like right now I have to shovel my snow in my new building that Lucy and I have, which I hate because it's a whole almost half a block long, but now it costs $100-something to get your snow shoveled. But when I was a kid, you know, you made $5 to shovel the snow. And so I used to also shovel Mahalia Jackson's snow because she was at the end of my block. So, you know, being around people like this every day, I mean, Von Freeman, Chico Freeman, the saxophonist, the son of Von Freeman. Chico and I, you know, are, you know, the same age. And so I knew his dad and George Freeman, who's still living. That was every day. Gene Ammons, Ramsey Lewis, you know, that was just my everyday life. And so it made me want to be excellent because all I saw was excellence. And that's something that's not necessarily the model of our community today. You know, African Americans believed that they had to dress better, speak better, carry themselves with a certain dignity because of the perceptions of how the rest of this country was looking at us. And at some point, we lost the excitement for that example and portrayal of excellence that was our history. We were not the ones with the most violence. We, you know, when I tell my personal kids that Jackson Park, Washington Park, wherever it was, we slept with my parents all night because we were never worried about being robbed or beaten up. We didn't lock our doors growing up in all the Black neighborhoods. The kids would run to everybody's houses because the kind of violence that is around us today, when I was growing up, it did not prevail. And that's a part of history too, not just art and culture. What were we like? Why did men take off their hats for women? Why did you get up for elders, women pregnant, women period on the train? Why did you never speak and holler when you spoke? You spoke in a calm tongue. Why did you feel that everyone was your brother and sister? Because that's what we said. Hey, brother, hey, sister. This was the way we lived, a space of love that translated our ability to survive against the odds of racism and anti-Blackness. We found ways to find historically the ways to support, protect, and acknowledge our value, even if others didn't. And historically, we've got to get back to that.
Wow. One, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to point towards, is this importance, and even the importance of the moment that we have, where we've had the crazy year of 2020 and the beginning of this year. And I do think that there's a window of time that we can start to recollect and remember some of these important things to help them be really a space we can be planted in and a lens through which we can see our own future. So I appreciate that, Kahil. Anybody else have any, we're gonna wrap up here, and in a second, we're gonna share the list of resources that we have, so that if you guys want to continue your research and your study and your reading, we'd love to contribute to that. Any other parting thoughts that anyone wants to offer?
Yeah, I'll say something real quick. It was a question actually that was asked that I was thinking about, but I didn't really answer. It was about a contribution. And again, I was just thinking about this idea of space, of curation, and of connection. And so I try and do that through those things, you know, and I can do that through music. I can do it through an object, because for me, it's important that we are not homogenous in how we think about things. And for example, the block party, yeah, I want to book Kahil because I like the music, but I also want these 16-year-olds who I can maybe book somebody who does footwork to somehow see Kahil, and it's wouldn't have seen him, and vice versa. You know, so a lot of things I try and do are not just, you know, house music or hip hop or just one thing. How can you bring folks together throughout this experience, not just of Black folks, but of all folks, so we can somehow maybe learn about each other through music? Or in the store, you can do it through objects, or a pair of sunglasses, A person might come in for, the other person might come in for a $500 watch. They might be from two different, parts of town, two different societies, but they hopefully can have this accidental connection. So I think the thing that, and Darlene talked about parties, we met people that we probably would not have met, in any other setting, in these certain cultural events, in these spaces. So I think it's important that we always expand, and not just, blackness, but also everything. I mean, we're influenced by everything. I was thinking about two of my influences when I was younger was actually a Chinese man. That was Bruce Lee. Everybody loved Bruce Lee, and he still influences me in so many ways today. So, that's a whole other part of the world, So I think it's important that we keep our minds open, that we curate these things for ourselves, that we can sometimes at some point share with others.
I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you even pointing out that, that importance of doing our work to bring people together. And I think that especially in a moment like we're in right now, that is extremely important. I'll just say this. One, I really appreciate all of you guys' time. I appreciate you guys being willing to just share a little bit of who you are and a little bit of what you've seen and a little bit of what you've been through. And I think you guys are all examples to be followed of folks that have, really, like we said, rooted yourself in the history and have made and are making your contribution within that context. And I really believe that there is, I think I can say, a prophetic quality to Black creativity, because it's constantly saying, in the face of challenge, in the face of difficulty, that there is something good coming, and there is something good that I can push towards, and that I believe about myself and the others around me. And so I just see all of you guys as participants in that tradition of, prophetic Black creativity. And I just appreciate you guys' example. So clapping again, virtual, snap, all of that. Appreciate you guys. I want to just invite Priya Shah on one more time to just address everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Darlene, Eric, Kahil, and Sadie. Y'all are, you're dope and amazing. And we're so grateful to have you guys a part of this conversation. Me and David have been so passionate about, this topic, and partially influenced by, our friends and you guys, about really reflecting on the past in order to really activate and take advantage of this time and this movement that we're in, and not to overlook what has come before us in order to really make change right now, and we understand that there is a disconnect about, not really having that curiosity. Me, David, and Eric were talking about that, right? Like not having that curiosity of what came before us and why that's so critical for us to really value and evaluate right now. So thank you guys for inspiring that conversation right now. I hope this is the beginning of many more conversations, and we do hope to continue this moving forward. And so I encourage all of you guys to continue to follow us, both The Simple Good and Choose Chicago, so that we can continue these dialogues and activate our voices and our amazing organizations that are really, coming together to amplify this, because this is an aligned interest of not only Chicago art, but creativity that influences our nation as a whole, and in turn the world, right? We have to really acknowledge like how we've influenced the world because of Black creativity. So I want to, direct you guys to our social, of course, and make sure y'all follow and connect with us and donate. You can still donate actually on the Eventbrite page to both of us, and that will support the continuation of this dialogue and supporting our amazing arts community that we both serve and hope to continue to grow together. And then in addition to that, we do have a list of resources that we hope that all you guys will explore. These are podcasts, books, and films that I think that is in a way and a medium for us to all explore and continue this curiosity. So David, I'll let you just speak to this because I know that you
appreciate you guys being with us, but I think it's important to just put the challenge out there. I think that there's so much rooting yourself in history that you can do on your own through things like books, we have some incredible books there, podcasts and films. So really, there's no excuse at this point. If you don't like to read a book, there's a film. If you don't like to watch a film, you can listen to a podcast. So any of those things we would love for you guys to check out. And like Priya said, we would love for you guys to follow us so you can stay up to date with all the great things we have coming up. And really, we just appreciate you guys being with us tonight.
Also, we do want to create a community of where we are building on this dialogue. So we do encourage you guys to check out these resources and then share them out, right? Share them with us, share us with the panelists, yes, and us on, on social in general, so we can keep that conversation going, because it's not supposed to stop here.
And just real quick, you should purchase all your books at the Silver Room.
Hello.
Yeah. We have all the I just got done reading Cast. It's Isabel Wilkerson's a great book. Buy them at the Silver Room, free same-day delivery.
Absolutely.
While you're there, actually, we got the quote tees out at the Silver Room.
Right, and then I'm gonna have a conversation with Eric about getting some True Chicago in there as well. Appreciate you guys, for real. Really appreciate you guys' time and just being with us. I don't take these times lightly, and I think that these times have the potential to really plant a seed that can grow something important in the future. So thank you guys.